whomever is listening to this, I want to encourage you to show up in the way that feels right for you and that isn't always based on the expectations of society or others for how that should look. Because at some point, that value misalignment creates tension and fuels or can fuel that overwhelm that we're all naturally going to experience.
Welcome back to the Kindness Is Pod. This week, I have not only an incredible guest, but an amazing friend joining me. We're going to sit down, have a very honest conversation about a lot of things. Now, this has been somewhat therapeutic for me, doing this podcast, having these conversations, taking an intricate look at what kindness truly is. And if there has been something that has stood out to you a little or resonated with you a lot, I would absolutely love for you to take 2 minutes to either follow, rate, or review, or all three, because it really means a lot. So, when I think about the way that this conversation is most likely going to go, I think about me as a teenager. I think about me as a child and all of these narratives that we are supposed to fit into in our society. And I am so grateful that I had parents who were like, oh yeah, you want to cut your hair off? Sure. Oh yeah, you love baseball? Absolutely. You're loud, you're excited, you're passionate. Feel those feelings and don't suppress them. Because I think as women, we are taught, I don't think I know, that we're taught to be quiet, to be calm, to not ruffle any feathers. And if I was taught that by my parents growing up, I don't know that I would be the human being that I am today. And Alexis is someone who fiercely lives her truth and doesn't fall to the societal pressures to live her life in a certain way. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I know I'm going to. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Kindness Is podcast. I am beyond excited today, and let me just warn you all before we start this episode. This is probably just going to be like a conversation between friends, because that's exactly what it is. I have Alexis Shepard on today, who I have to share really quickly. We met, Alexis, probably 5 years ago now?
Yeah.
But we're not friends, didn't know each other, didn't even follow each other on Instagram at that point.
Nope.
And Alexis so kindly bought one of our shirts. And then somehow, we didn't even really have conversation that day. We ended up becoming really close friends. However, we have not spoken in a while, so we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. I'm going to introduce her first, and then we're going to get this ball rolling. So I'm joined by my dear friend, Alexis Shepard, who is a growth-obsessed educator and side hustler that is passionate about empowering people in their professional and personal evolution. Since 2018, she has been the face of the AfroEducator, championing teacher wellness on her program. Recently, and we're going to talk about this tonight, though, Alexis announced that her journey as the AfroEducator has come to an end, and now she is hard at work building what is next. Regardless of the space or place, Alexis is determined to use her gift of gab, which you'll hear tonight too, to help people live boldly on their terms and not anyone else's. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. I am so geeked for this conversation. Y'all, we had a little bit of a pre-conversation before we started recording, but y'all are about to get all of this good old catch-up session. I'm glad you described it that way, Kaitlin, because this is absolutely going to be just two friends talking, and y'all are going to really just be listening in. One of the things that I love when we get together is that it's just all authentic, all good vibes. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes. And that is something that and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this to you before. But that's something that I've really been honing in on in my adult life, and this might
Mhm.
play into some of the things you're going to share tonight, is that I'm so tired of surface relationships.
Yeah.
Because I think, particularly as women, we have so many surface
Mhm.
relationships throughout time that have been developed. And I want to be more open and honest and raw and love my friends.
Mhm.
Make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, no, what I hear you speaking to really is just vulnerability, and I know that's
Mm,
something that's really important to me, but not just vulnerability in and of itself, but feeling affirmed and validated in that vulnerability, and I think as women, you're socialized we talked about this a little bit before, you're socialized to be nice and to be quote, unquote, "kind," you know, how
mhm.
kind and nice are equated, and so I think that's where when you talk about those surface level relationships, that's where that comes from. Is because of that socialization that tells you you need to be, courteous and nice to everyone. And so you end up having, a million different surface level connections. And like you, I'm also at that point where I really want to invest in and cultivate deep connections
Mhm.
with folks where I can be vulnerable and where I can just be raw and authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. So Alexis and I were both classroom teachers.
Mhm.
I left what, about a year before you did?
Yeah.
Possibly, I
Yeah.
think. And Alexis is kind of moving on too. And I had the opportunity of sharing my story with her on her podcast, which we're going to get to that later too. I want you to listen to her fabulous podcast. But I kind of just want to hear your journey and why you chose to leave the classroom, what is coming in the very near future, how you feel as though a lot of educators, particularly female educators, will really, really resonate with what is coming.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. So, um, if we wanna go back to the beginning, and I won't bore y'all with the nitty-gritty details, but I started teaching in 2012. That was my very first year in the classroom. And I was certified in the state of South Carolina, which is where I'm from and where I currently live, to teach elementary school, which is second through sixth grades here. And so I started in second grade and I taught second grade for about 4 years before I transitioned to fourth grade and later sixth grade. I burned out for the first time when I was about 3 or 4 years in. And at the time, I had this mentality where even though I was, um, brand new or relatively new to the profession, I went into teaching with this semi-saviorist complex mixed with a little bit of, I don't know if we'll call it pride or overconfidence, but I really wanted to step into a classroom and have people not believe that I was new. I was
Mhm.
really convinced that I wanted to work so hard that people would be like, wow, this is just your first year or your second year, or you haven't been teaching for 5 years yet. Like, I didn't realize at the time that that was actually really toxic.
Yeah.
Um, but it really did, I think, speed me towards burnout quicker than had I went into the profession with a more, I think, temper mentality. So anyway, burned out for the first time in year 4, but at that time, I just believed, well, this is what I signed up for, this is what
Mhm.
happens when you work hard at something and when you're in a service-based profession is you just burn out. And so I just, kind of dealt with it. It was really emotionally taxing, not just for me, but also for my husband. We were not married at that time, but we were dating. And it was really challenging for him and for my parents and for my friends because I had no emotional or mental bandwidth to be able to hold space for them. So a couple years later, around year 6 or 7, when I burned out again, I was convinced that I needed to do something differently. And I, at that point in my own personal development, was able to evaluate that I had some beliefs that were going to be problematic if I didn't address them. So I created the AfroEducator as a um, Really it was just a social media handle that I thought was
Mhm.
really descriptive of the place that I was in at the time. I am an educator at heart. So even though I'm no longer in the classroom now, I still refer to myself as an educator because I
Mhm.
know at my core that's what I do. I want to empower people through knowledge that I can somehow provide to them. Um, and so with creating the AfroEducator, it was never intended to be a brand or any kind of platform. It was just like, hey, let me connect with other educators who maybe are having similar experiences and who I can relate to outside of my local sphere. We can, not only share those experiences, but maybe even talk about strategies and tools so that, we can not just survive in the profession, but we can thrive both personally and professionally. And from there, it really just kind of snowballed and really became this way bigger thing than I thought that it would. As far as me being involved in different teacher conferences and being able to empower educators to prioritize themselves and their wellness and connecting me with incredible people. I mean, you and I are connected because I had that platform, and some of my closest, most treasured friendships I have made through Instagram, through that platform. And so it was an incredible vehicle for both my personal and my professional growth. I think through the AfroEducator is where I really became confident in. I've always been a talker. I've always had that gift of gab, but having that confidence and that validation that I can stand in front of a room of people and really command that room and really help
Mhm.
folks believe in themselves in different ways. Again, the connections that I was able to make with other educators, and then just being able to actualize and recognize some of the other skills that I had that I wasn't always able to externalize in the classroom setting was, I think, really, really great for me professionally. And I do think contributed to, at least in some part, to why I ended up leaving. I didn't leave for entrepreneurship reasons, which shout out to the folks who are actually doing the entrepreneurship thing full time. It is terrifying to me.
Mhm.
But really I left because of a couple of things. One of those things was definitely recognizing that I had a lot more um skills that I felt like I wasn't able to use in the classroom. Or if I could use them, I had to work really, really, really hard in order to make them fit. And then there was also this recognition that there was a lot of value misalignment. And that was really a key for me, is that I am at this point in my own development in a holistic sense, personally, professionally, relationally, no matter how you slice it, where I have this deep understanding of what is important to me and what my priorities are and what my values are. And anything that I touch and am involved in a meaningful way needs to have value alignment for me. So, as a teacher, one of the things that, or some of the things that were missing for me were autonomy, um,
Mm.
and my ability to truly be creative and to contribute in the way that I wanted to contribute. I also wanted opportunities to build deeper connections with adult learners specifically. I really began to realize that while I loved my relationships with my students, it was more impactful to me to actually be able to affect the adults who would then be responsible for, creating those ripple effects for students. So I left the classroom in the middle of the school year. We're going to, I think, venture into the territory of talking about boldly walking in your own path. But
Yeah.
I left in the middle of 2021. It was Christmas break. 2021, I transitioned into the higher ed space, where I worked in university admissions for a little over a year before I transitioned just recently, actually, into the world of human resources. And so now I am a training and onboarding specialist in the human resources department at a university, effectively for those of you who aren't sure what that means, I primarily do instructional design for customized trainings and for different things that we use to educate and enrich the experience of the faculty and staff at the university I work for. So that's kind of the professional side of things and how I've gotten to where I am now. So I'm very much still slaying a 9 to 5, but then outside of that, I, work very hard on my side hustle, which for the last 5 years has been the AfroEducator, which you did mention earlier, is coming to an end here very, very soon.
Mhm. How do you feel about that?
Honestly, if you had asked me this question a year ago, I would have been
Mhm.
terrified, but more than ready, very excited. Like if it was up to me, I would have changed, all of my social media handles and launched everything 3 months ago. But
Mhm.
logistically, that didn't really make sense, and I knew that I wanted to be much more intentional this time around with what it is that I'm doing. So honestly, I'm just very, very ready and very excited. I do feel a sense of, I think, deep gratitude for
Mm.
the journey that the AfroEducator platform has taken me on, for the people that I've met, and for what it helped me realize. But I don't feel any type of sentimentality that's making me hold on to it, if that makes sense.
What a beautiful mindset to have because and I know we both have shared similar thoughts on this. When you're choosing to leave the classroom, there's a lot of that sentimental stuff that gets in the way. There's a lot of how can I leave? How am I
Mhm.
still going to make a difference? How am I going to impact lives? And you cling so deeply to the sentimental aspects of
Yep.
things that I'm just, as a friend, so overjoyed hearing you say that you are excited for this new chapter. And I'm really excited, everyone, because as you can already tell, Alexis, anytime I hear you talk, I feel like a better human. Like I come out on the other side of things, like more educated and inspired by you. And what is coming next, we're getting a little bit of a sneak peek into for anyone who listens to this, because Alexis has shared, but hasn't fully shared her next journey. And I want to hear a little bit about that because I think it's something that a lot of people, particularly our
Yes.
supporters, would benefit from. So
Yeah.
where is this new journey taking you?
Yeah. So with the AfroEducator, even though I was not mostly, exclusively focused in that K-12 space and on K-12 educators, it really at the core of what I was doing was helping folks who were overworked and overwhelmed become through the stresses and successes of life. That was really just it. And as I have, been separated from the classroom environment, I have found that a lot of K-12 stuff no longer resonates with me in the same way. And I know it's very obvious. It's because it's not my place or space anymore. So
Yeah.
those acute issues that used to impact me head on don't impact me the same way anymore. Granted, I still care a lot about the environment because I care about education. I
Mhm.
care about the students that our system impacts. I care deeply about the teachers that our system impacts, but it just no longer serves me for where I am. And one of the things I have always tried to be transparent about is that the Afro educator and what I'm doing with wellness and self care is just a journey. And it is as much my journey as it is your journey. And the thing about that is that evolution is a part of that process. And I've even talked about that within the context of what I do now and how I've had to take a step back or I've had to readjust things to reflect where I am. And so, in moving beyond the Afro educator, I want to continue to empower and serve specifically women who are overwhelmed, which is really, I think, the majority of the women that I talk to now when we talk about wellness and self-care, right?
Who
Um,
isn't?
Right, exactly. So it's really the same audience, and so I'm really, really excited about it. It's called Over 30 Overwhelmed. Not to be sort of stuck on the number, because over 30 really isn't about an age. It's really for any woman who is navigating messy self-care, personal growth, and professional
Mm.
evolution. So it's for anyone who experiences any level of overwhelm with basically being a woman and figuring out how to adult. For me, it is as a Black woman, as a woman who is child free, as a woman who is married, as a woman who is trying to cultivate and maintain friendships, who is trying to reach new professional heights, etc. And all of that can be incredibly overwhelming. And figuring out how I can help women be in community with one another and also be more confident in themselves and living on their terms. I was recently telling my husband and a couple of other friends of mine that I just feel like I don't want to say plight, but that's the only word that's at the tip of mine right now. But that my plight in life has been to walk my own path. And I say that because I have had a number of instances throughout my life where there is something that I'm doing that I don't want to say no one else is, but very few people around me are doing that same thing. And it can be very overwhelming to figure out how to, for example, navigate through a world that tells you that your worth as a woman is tied up in having children when you have actively decided that that's not a choice that you want. Um, or figuring out how to navigate in new professional spaces when there is this expectation, especially when you're a teacher or when you're in a service industry, that you're going to stay there forever because people need you and
Mm.
the children need
Mhm.
you. And so my thought was, how can I, number one, expand what I'm talking about, but also how can I touch more folks who are in that space of overwhelm, who are not necessarily impacted by K-12 in the same way, but who would still benefit from having that validation and that affirmation.
And we all need that right now. I mean, I think societally, we are set up for being burnt out and
Yep.
overwhelmed,
Yep.
particularly as women.
Mhm.
And I'm so tired of hearing, make time, take a bubble bath, light a candle, read a book, when sometimes you literally feel like you just do not have enough hours in the day
Mhm.
because we are so overworked and we are expected to wear so many different hats
So many
for
hats.
so many different people. And I think for me, the one thing that is almost somewhat freeing is having these real connections and
Yes.
knowing that you are not in isolation.
Mhm.
Particularly for me, the past couple of years, just really honing in on our Kind Cotton community and like doing book clubs and hosting some Zooms with people to let
Mhm.
other women know that they're not alone,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that has been really powerful. Something you touched upon that I have thought about tremendously is that I grew up, and my mom's going to listen to this. So, hey mom.
Hi,
She's
mom.
one of my listeners, Alexis. Um,
I love that.
I grew up with a mom whose womanhood was very much centered around being a mom.
Mm.
And I say that with so much love and empathy. However, that does not define who I am as a
Mm.
woman, and that does not define who I am as a person. And I've chosen a very different path for myself because you and I have spoken about this for many, many years. Kevin and I thought that we were not going to have children either. So my self-worth has never been dependent upon
Mhm.
my daughter. So navigating that in the realm of other moms
Right.
can be very, very tricky too. And I'm not saying it's wrong. Like I love my mom. My mom is my best friend. I think that what has made her happy and completely fulfilled is being a mom. That is not what at the core of my
Mm,
being makes me fulfilled.
mhm.
Is it a huge piece of it? 100%. I love my daughter more than anything in the world, but there are so many other pieces. So I want to hear from you. Why have you chosen this path? How often are you gaslit for it?
Oh, man.
And how can one be a supportive friend
Yeah.
and embrace your womanhood and choosing this life?
I also want to really just hold space for the fact that as a mom, that you are so willing to be upfront and honest and transparent and vulnerable about the fact that your entire worth isn't tied up in your daughter. I think it's important to recognize that because I think, at least in my observation, obviously I don't have that experience, but in my observation of moms that I know a lot of incredible, incredible moms and just mom communities that I've seen online or run into online, there is this expectation, it feels like, once you become a parent, that you are going to parent a certain way and that you're going to have certain feelings. And that if you ever have different feelings, you better not be honest about them because your entire life, your entire world, your entire sort of identity better be wrapped in you being a mom, right? That's how you quote be a good mom. I think at least
100%.
as far as socialization goes. Yeah. So I think um, I love what you said because I think it gives permission for other people to also be honest because what you said doesn't at all imply or sound like you love your daughter any less than any other mother.
Mhm.
And you have a clear idea of who it is that you are and what else it is that you value in addition to her that make you this multifaceted, multi-dimension human being. And for me and my womanhood or any woman's womanhood, that's what I so desperately um, want to communicate and empower women in through Over 30 Overwhelmed. And as far as my own journey, so it wasn't until I think I was in my early 20s that I really started to wrestle with the feeling, but I didn't take it seriously until I turned 30 because people, when I would tell them I wasn't sure if I wanted kids, speaking of gaslighting, they would tell me, "Oh, well, I used to be just like you, but I just woke up one day in my late 20s or my early 30s and boom, I just wanted kids." It like clockwork, if I had a quarter for every time I got that comment, okay, we wouldn't even have to talk about entrepreneurship, okay, because I would still be racking in the checks. But yeah, people would tell me, you'll just feel it," or they'd say, "When you meet
Mhm.
the right man, you will love him so much that that's just something that you will want to do." And
Yep.
so honestly, people would ask me about kids. And before I turned 30, I would just say, not right now, not right now, not yet. Ask me when I'm 30. Because I thought for some reason I got it in my mind, Kaitlin, that once I turn 30, it'll just
You're
happen.
ready to make babies.
Yep, the biological clock, it'll be like ding, 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 and I'll just wake up and it'll want to happen. Ironically, the same year that I turned 30 was 2020 and was the exact year that I also started therapy and I started processing through those feelings. And what I realized was that for years, I was waiting for something to make me have the feeling, to make me feel that instinct that says, hey, you want to be a parent, you want to have children. And I've not had it. I've never had it. And so the choice for me has really been about honoring what feels right. Um, and thankfully, my husband has been on board with that. He's not, so we're not misaligned there. I have a lot of people that have asked me that as well. Well, what does your husband think? And it's like, well, um,
He's happy too.
because his permission counts. And my husband, he has the sweetest response. And I have even asked him, okay, as a a skeptic. I've even asked him every once in a while to see if his answer changes, over the years. And he's always said, I married you to have a life with you.
Mm.
And whatever that entails is what that entails. He said, so if we don't have children, cool.
Yeah.
If we ended up having children, cool. And I think that that's so sweet because he's like, I didn't marry you to procreate. He's like, I married you because I love you and I wanted
Mhm.
to go on this life journey with you. And so for me, like I was saying before, it has been about honoring what feels right. And I'm going to be honest, I have thought a lot about when I was teaching, and you can probably relate to this too, and any teacher listening, especially if you teach, I think middle and elementary school, can relate to this idea that we tell kids a lot. Kids are told a lot to do what's right, or to have integrity, even if you're on your own, even if you're by yourself,
Mm.
stand up for what you believe in, even if you're standing alone. Y'all know the
Yeah.
poster where the kid is standing on the
Yeah.
rock in the middle of the water. And I have very much felt as a woman that is child free by choice that it is like being on that rock in the middle of the water. And we tell kids that, I think, flippantly. And with that particular choice, for me personally anyway, it has very much felt really, really challenging at times, because it is isolating, because so many folks around you have kids, and also because socially, being child free by choice is still relatively countercultural. And I
Mhm.
think it speaks to this larger lesson that sometimes, living, I won't even say sometimes, I think anytime you choose to live on your terms and you choose to live in your truth, it is bold, it is audacious, it is courageous, and it takes a level of I think bravery and of resilience. And
Mhm.
I almost hesitate to use those words because I don't want to paint this picture like, I think I'm all these things, because on the inside I'm just a ball of anxiety.
Yeah.
um but yeah, that's how important honoring your truth and what feels right for you is to me. And when we talk about kindness, I think that's the greatest kindness that you can, I think, give the world and yourself.
Mhm.
Because when you show up as your most authentic self, I think it's not just enriching for you, but it is evident to the people that you interact with as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's inspiring. It's representative. We
Mm,
talk about representation all the time,
mm,
right? And kind cut, and we
mm.
talk about the importance of representation in children's books
Yeah.
and representation in movies and shows and all of these things. But if we are hiding a piece of ourselves,
Mm,
then we're not putting that representation on display for others.
mm,
So there's something really deep about that. And there's something so important. And also, just to put this out there, because I feel like we can't have an episode of talking about motherhood or choosing to be child free without saying, stop asking women when they're going to get pregnant.
oh my gosh.
Just putting it out there, because there are so many levels to that. There
Yeah.
are the women who have been trying for years and years and years.
Mhm,
There are the women who have lost children.
mhm.
There are the women who are choosing not to be a mom. There are the women who may be pregnant and don't want to announce it yet. So, like, it's not like, hey, what's your favorite sushi?
Right.
Like we so typically put it out there as. So, like,
Yeah.
anyone who's listening, let's stop doing that.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Yeah.
Pause.
I around Mother's Day this year saw a post from a woman. I want to say her Instagram handle is the Motherhood Mission, maybe.
Mhm.
But she portrays motherhood as a spectrum, and it goes from sort of zero, which is sort of the child free by choice end, through all of the different avenues that you just mentioned. And when she posted this Happy Mother's Day greeting, her Happy Mother's Day greeting actually included, women who are child free, women who are trying to conceive, etc., because of the fact that motherhood, and I thought it was this really interesting concept, is a spectrum. Even if
Mhm.
you're at the very end of the spectrum and the rest of it doesn't apply to you. And I thought that that was really interesting because I don't think that socially we look at it that way. But I think it is important to acknowledge that, especially when it comes to how people feel like they can approach women. And most of us, here's the thing, and I'm still guilty of it. Most of us are not comfortable standing boldly in our truth to people
Mhm.
because it is, number one, it is so deeply personal, but also because we fear the judgment or because we don't know if we're going to get that validation or that affirmation. I know um, I have friends who have struggled to conceive, who are, working through the emotions that come with that. I know for my husband and I personally, there are times that we choose not to share our choice because of the fact that it is also deeply personal. But then there's also that tug where, as a woman, I feel compelled to be nice, right? I feel compelled to over explain or to somehow divulge this deeply personal choice to people. Um, because otherwise, what will people think? Will people think that I'm being nice? Will people think that I'm mean? Will people think that I'm a bitch?
Mhm.
There are a lot of parts of that that intersect with that choice.
Story of my life. Over explaining. Over explaining. I mean, I think I'm stepping out of that, and I think ultimately what you're coming to here is, and what we come to, I think, every time we talk, is just this place of authenticity and
Mm.
this place of being who you are and being grounded in that. And ultimately, regardless of if someone thinks that's nice or not, it is kind,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like you said in the beginning, kindness does not equate with niceness. A lot of the things that we do and we stand for may not be considered nice, right?
Right.
Like calling someone in when they are hurting another human
Mhm.
may not be considered nice typically, but it damn sure is kind,
Yeah.
and it is the kind thing to do. And I think that's what we have to live by.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head with just, I think, the very, very core of any message that I could hope to communicate to, any woman or anyone that I would be able to interact with and come in contact with is that, when you ask about how can people celebrate womanhood outside of,
Mm,
that social conditioning that you have to be a mom or that womanhood has to look a certain way. And I think that's living in what that means for you. If for you, that is motherhood, okay, great. That there's no shade or no criticism of that. But for all of the women who are uh, business owners or moms, or they're, single and traveling, or whatever it is that they're doing, if they're, more feminine or not. I
mm,
think it's about defining what that is for you. And when we go, I think, deeper into that, I talked a little bit earlier about value alignment and about knowing what matters most to you. I think it's just having a lot of clarity around what your values are and then lining everything up so that they fit into those buckets. So, does your job, does your 9 to 5, have value alignment for you in some way? Is what you're doing in your personal life aligning with those values? Because that's really where you're going to be able to live in that authenticity. Uh,
mhm.
I would love to be able to sleep in every day and just draw a paycheck for opening my eyes, but that is not my current life. Um,
Yeah,
I have to work a
same.
9 to 5, but or not but and in working that 9 to 5, I have thought about how can I make this 9 to 5 really work for me, and I'm really fortunate. Um, that I have been able to secure a position where I am not just showing up every day doing tasks, but it's oriented around the fact that I love to develop people. And that's what
Mhm.
I get to do, for a living in that 9 to 5. And that value alignment matters so much to me because it allows me to show up as the person that I truly am at my core. Whomever is listening to this, I want to encourage you to show up in the way that feels right for you and that isn't always based on the expectations of society or others for how that should look. Because at some point, that value misalignment creates tension
Mhm.
and fuels or can fuel that overwhelm that we're all naturally going to experience.
Absolutely. It's I mean, I experienced that when I decided to leave teaching, like, how could you lose your benefits? How could
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
I mean, you're really gonna sell shirts and try to make a living? How could you do this when you just had a child? You have a child to
Mm,
provide for, like, all of these things when none of which felt like home to me anymore.
mm,
I was living in a state that I, quite frankly, was afraid living in.
yep.
I was in a job that I felt was not aligning with anything
Mm-mm.
that I loved and stood for. I mean, I haven't shared this story a ton. I definitely haven't shared it on here, but the sole reason that was like kind of the icing on the cake for me was when they canceled our DEI training and no one saw any problem with it. Like it was a very like, this is no big deal. And I
Yeah, I
like
remember that.
wrote email after email, like, no, do you understand what this is going to turn into? And now we're in a state where books are literally taken from the shelves of, and I was like, yeah, see, told you I saw this coming, but no one thought that this was a
Mm,
big deal. Um, I digress. But with that being said, it's really scary to live your truth. Like,
yeah.
it is really scary to stand in alignment with your values.
Yeah.
However, in doing so, you are creating freedom for yourself.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself and I also say this with, like, in regards to me leaving and pursuing something that was not a regular 9 to 5, I have immense privilege in being able to do so,
Right.
right? And I got lucky in being able to do so. But regardless of what it is, like Alexis was talking to, it is a very freeing space. Although it is
Mhm.
scary, it just feels better.
Yeah, it does. And is that not the greatest kindness that you can give
Mhm,
to yourself? And if you are a parent in any capacity, whether you have your own biological children or you're an auntie or you just in some way are influencing kids or really anyone else, I think it's also great representation when you talk about that. And I know for me that's something that has been a challenge is that, I don't have a lot of representation, at least not in my local sphere, in my local community, or in my circle of folks who have chosen a child-free lifestyle. And so without
mhm,
that representation, you don't get that affirmation or that validation that, hey, everything's gonna be okay. Like this is a path people choose and you can totally do it. So it kind of
mhm,
feels a little bit like we're trailblazers. And I know certainly for our friends and our family, we kind of are because not a lot of people have made that choice.
mhm,
So in that it is challenging, but also it is something that I think every day that goes by, I am starting to pat myself on the back a little bit for standing in that truth, even when it is hard. Because my hope is that other folks around me that are
mhm,
our godchildren, that my friends, that our family and other folks are seeing us stand in our truth and do so boldly,
mhm.
um, even when it's challenging.
And that's also the beauty of what you're building. And that's the beauty of connection through social media is that you can find other people
Mm-hmm.
too. And you always kind of know, regardless of whatever it is that you are feeling, that you're not alone because you can connect with people across the world
Yeah.
who are also living their truth. And I think that's really powerful. So, what you want to do going forward, my main question for you with overwhelmed and over 30, what are over 30 and overwhelmed? Tell me.
Got it. Over 30, overwhelmed. You got it.
Okay,
You could.
I got it. Tell me, big picture,
Yeah.
your biggest hopes and dreams, what you want to achieve 5 years down the road. What is it going to be?
So I'm really gonna shoot huge here. Um, so I'm gonna call it like long-ish term.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I would love to have a course, to be able to do master classes, and ultimately, I want to be able to like, I don't know if I'll say coordinate, but definitely um speak at no, I'm gonna say coordinate. You said big, we're gonna go big. To
Hmm.
coordinate or found a I don't know if I want to call it a conference, but for now we'll call it a space for all of the women in the over 30 overwhelmed community to gather and to be able to connect in person through those shared experiences, like where we're having that connection through DMs and you know the reason that we love the power of social media and the internet is I want to be able to bring that space live and in person to people. And so that would be my biggest hope. You know, I guess people call that a conference. I'm not sure that it would be set up that way, but
Hmm.
I really just want to be able to create a community of women um, where I can connect them to one another so that they have that sense of validation and belonging,
Hmm.
but also where I can connect with them too. You know, one of the things that one of the pieces of messaging that I've been working on the back end as I'm getting this launched has been there's this one section, matter of fact, of my intro where I say I'm not an expert or a therapist. And it's, I think, really important for me to mention that because I am very much on this journey, just like you and just like everyone else. And my
Hmm.
goal, my aspiration is that I am walking alongside you and holding your hand and saying, "Hey, we may not be on the same journey, but I am literally with you here in this." That's something that was important to me when I was serving primarily teachers. But now with women, that's something, you know, I've realized affirmation is the language of love and validation is the language of belonging. Like, and those things are deeply, deeply important to me. And so I want women to feel that for themselves. Uh,
Hmm.
and I want to be able to I guess I would say imbue women with that as well and to have this like symbiotic relationship where they are not only you know maybe gleaning things from me and from my experience but where I'm able to get that from them as well.
Mm. Sign me up.
Okay.
Sign me up. No, but in all seriousness, I want to know before we wrap this all up where people can follow you, where people can sign up for your email, because that may be the best way to stay connected with what is to come, and just how people can support you in this new journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen closely because this is going to get a little complicated because we're literally in the midst of the transition right now. So if you want to follow me, the best way to keep up with me is going to be on Instagram. If you are listening to this before July 10th, it is at the AfroEducator. If you are interested in signing up for my email list, again, hold tight there because I am currently not sort of managing my current email list at my current website, but I am beginning to release information about how you can get connected through my new platform. I will be launching a brand new website that will hold and be home to all of the over 30 overwhelmed stuff. I will also be launching a brand new quiz. So if you're like, girl, yes, I am overwhelmed. I have my overwhelmed types quiz. It's 5 very quick questions to really get you started on that journey. So if you are interested in following along, you can also go ahead and follow me over at Over 30 Overwhelmed on Instagram. The Instagram has not been officially launched, but it is up, and I have soft launched it to friends. So at the AfroEducator or at Over 30 Overwhelmed, either one, I will be more than happy to connect with you and to have you as a part of the community.
You are such a gift.
Oh, thank you, friend.
Yeah, I just wanted to end with that. And I hope that everyone enjoyed this. I hope you all go and support Alexis on her journey. I know that she will be able to support you. She already has been able to do so for me in a multitude of ways. So I'm so excited you're bringing this to life.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy our catch up sessions. I'm really thankful that you always hold space for me, even when you don't have space for yourself. So I really appreciate that. And I treasure this friendship. So thank you so much. And thank you for having me again.
Mm. And with that, everyone go and call a friend. I'm going to leave it with that. Go call a friend. Let them know they are loved, they are valued, because this was a beautiful moment for me. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Kindness Is podcast. If you love it and it's adding even a little bit of value to your life, we would love, love, love if you could subscribe, rate, and review so we can reach even more people and make this world a little bit more kind.